What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. I forgot to tweet, guys. I forgot to tweet. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Not on my A game here tonight. Although I was only 2 minutes late. This officially started at 8:17 Central Time. Okay, people. So that is not too bad. That is not too bad as far as me being late goes. Let's see. YouTube live time. Brett Yormark talking with Fox and ESPN. TCU and OSU go at it. Oh, actually, let's do and new Big 12 title odds because I saw those come out. Boom. Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. We're off and running. Thank you, Zach, for the donation. I will get to that in just a moment. Here's what we have coming up tonight. If you can tell by the teas, we got a little bit of realignment. We got a little bit of actual football going. A couple of different angles to attack this from today. One is that there was a really good article about Brett Yormark from Adam Zagoria, who apparently now works for Forbes, which was news to me. I mean, I remember the old Zags blog days of like basketball recruiting, but apparently now he's working for Forbes. He put together an article with quotes from Brett Yormark that I think you're going to like. I think you will definitely enjoy what it is that Brett Yormark had to say, particularly that he says he's having meaningful conversations with Fox and ESPN right now, which is great news. That is great, great, great news for the conference. And man, this is just a confident guy making a real push for the league right now. I don't know how much you've been paying attention. And I actually forgot this. Speaking of paying attention, I remember that some point along the way it was leaked or discussed that Yormark was going to have kind of like a media car wash thing out of New York. And that's happening right now. And so you're seeing him. He was on with Mike Greenberg at ESPN earlier today. I saw that video. The Big 12. He got in front of the mayor. Was it the mayor of New York? Whoever it was in New York that said Kansas doesn't have a brand. He got that guy to hold up like a Kansas football jersey and tweet about the brand of Kansas. Meanwhile, they've been really doing a great job of pushing the numbers that KU, TCU, and Texas Tech, Oklahoma State did this weekend on TV. That's been all over the place. The college game day viewership in Lawrence last weekend, which was the best for a pre-November show since 2010. I know that's a ton of qualifiers, but it was pretty impressive. 2.3 million people watched it on Saturday in Lawrence. So lots of good things happening with the league. Brett Yormark is making sure that this league markets. I mean, the league itself has done more marketing that I've just been able to see come across the Twitter timeline and through other media outlets here in the last, I don't know, like month than I've ever seen, like collectively have ever seen this league do, being very, very proactive. So I really enjoy that. I really, really enjoy that a lot. We will also discuss the Big Ten. So the Pac-12 is kind of celebrating right now. If you're reading John Canzano's tweets or anything he's writing, it's a bit of a celebration for the Pac-12 right now because the feeling was Kevin Warren's comments at Big Ten Basketball Media Day, which apparently has already been happening this week. I know the Big 12 is next week, and I may get a chance to stop by for a little bit, considering it's just right down the street from me. But Kevin Warren spoke and was much more. This was not the Kevin Warren from Big 12 football media days that seemed very aggressive and in go mode on expansion. It seems like the Big Ten has taken its foot off the gas a little bit, at least for right now. So there's some celebration in Pac-12 circles about that. When it comes down to actual football, not only do I have new Big 12 title odds, but we have a huge game coming up this weekend. That's not why I laughed. TCU and Oklahoma State. Texas will try and hold serve against Iowa State. It'll be interesting to watch Quinn Ewers against that Iowa State defense because that is a pretty damn salty Iowa State defense. But outside of what's happening there, we have new Big 12 title odds. And then the reason I laugh is we have this Jalen Daniels injury saga, the Kansas quarterback. I had been hearing it was going to be more anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks, and it seemed like that was a pretty common refrain out there. Nick Schwartz from 610 Sports in Kansas City had put out that it was an AC separation, I believe is what it was, in the shoulder. And if you just Google the time frame for that, it would put it in about that 2 to 6 week range. And then all of a sudden we got a tweet this week from a reporter that does some freelance work with the Lawrence Journal-World saying that he was out for the year. And then Jalen Daniels himself disputed that. Kansas put out a video of Jalen Daniels like in the office of Lance Leipold without anything on the arm or shoulder or whatever. So it would appear that he probably is going to be back this year. It's been a wild week. There's been a lot happening in Big 12 country. So anyway, We'll break it all down. I even saw just before I came on here, I had to throw out a snarky tweet about it, of course. But I did see that according to one set of power rankings, the Big 12 is the strongest conference in all of college football right now, ahead of the SEC. So there's a lot to discuss. Now, you guys know the deal. If you've been here before, you can control where we go with a lot of this. You can control the content simply by donating and getting into the chat that way. That is the way to guarantee that your chat will be seen by me. It will pin it up at the top for me, and I will get to it. There are already over 150 people in here. Too much for me to read everything that's happening there. If you want to get your comment, your question or comment read, you can donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That little $ right there is how you do that. And that is not only letting your voice be heard, dictating some of the content here tonight, but it's also a way to support me bringing you Big 12 content each and every week here on the channel, doing live shows Wednesday and Sunday. And if there are breaking news events in between there, getting you content there as well. If you could like the video, I would appreciate that as well. That is totally free. That's one way you can support the channel that does not take financial means. If you are watching this after the fact, it's not live. You can support the channel by going to Venmo and me donating on Venmo there. It's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to do that. So there's the rundown. That's what we got today. I see some donations already. Let's get to it. What's up, Zach? Zach, first in. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate the donation. Appreciate the support as always. Zach says, let's get back to Houston bashing. They needed a big comeback to barely beat a Memphis team last week. Can we call this football season a bust for them? Well, I will tell you this, Zach. I watched that Houston comeback, which was last Friday. That was last Friday, right? That was a standalone game. So that was crazy. That was insane. Houston recovered an onside kick to do that. And like before that, I was with you, Zach. I mean, I was ready to write that thing off. I felt like that was going to be the season. Like they were getting pounded by Memphis pretty good. And I thought, man, like this just seems totally over. It was a crazy comeback. There was definitely some luck involved. You know, when you get an onside kick, there's always an element of that. But man, that is the type of thing that could galvanize a season. I will just say that much. So I'm not ready to totally bury Houston yet. It has not been good. I mean, don't get me wrong. It has not been good. An incredibly disappointing year for a team. I mean, I think you can make the case that they're the most disappointing team in the country, or at least one of them, just because the expectation was that they were going to compete, if not be the favorite to win the AAC this year. But, you know, lost to Tulane. Tulane's almost ranked. That's not terrible. Kansas is ranked. That's not terrible. Texas Tech is pretty good. So there are the losses there. Those are not awful losses. Maybe the worst thing on the resume is the win 34-27 over Rice. But, you know, winning at UTSA, I don't think anybody should be apologizing for that. Now they got the comeback against Memphis. I understand. And Zach, I'm not involved in it as much as you are in the AAC, like watching these games. I'm not as familiar with it. That was the first time I really watched them. Well, I watched them play Kansas quite a bit this year, and they didn't look very good. So I get where you're coming from. But I'm going to cut Houston a little bit of slack here and say maybe this is a galvanizing moment, and maybe Dana can get this thing turned around. They've got Navy, South Florida, SMU coming up the next 3 weeks. I mean, or I'm sorry. Yeah, Navy, South Florida, SMU, then Temple, East Carolina, Tulsa. I mean, honestly, mostly losable and winnable games there I foresee for Houston. But I will just be really intrigued to see if this is nothing, if it was total luck, it was a blip on the radar screen, or if this is a galvanizing turn it around kind of moment for Dana. I mean, he needs it to be. He needs it to be a galvanizing turn it around kind of moment, because otherwise you're headed straight for the Big 12. You're headed straight for the big leagues next year. And if it's coming off of a real dud of a season this year, that's not going to bode well, I'm sure, for Houston. There has to be quite a sense of urgency right now to get things moving in the right direction as they head into the Big 12. Let's see. T. Fendia says, yes, Zach, Cougs know Tune is not as advertised. Oh, all right. So some Clayton Tune issues there. And yeah, I'm sure Houston fans are well aware of the frustration and struggles of this year. I'm keeping an open mind. I understand if you're a Houston fan and you would not be keeping as open of a mind, because believe me, I wear my fandom on my sleeve with K-State, and I get it. I mean, third quarter of the Texas Tech game a couple of weeks ago, I thought it was a loss. I mean, I'm tweeting like this, does anybody feel like K-State's winning? So I get it as a fan, how you could be much more negative about it. But as a neutral observer, I am looking at this and saying, like, maybe there's still at least a little bit of something there that Dana can pull on and build on with the win, and not only the win, but the way that they got it over Memphis. What's here's my Cyclone, David Z. What up, David? Not David Z. He says, sad Saturday in Ames. Brothers, father, and cousin returned to the Jack for the first time in 10 years. Not a fun game to watch and depressing walk back across the bridge. ISU find offense, beat Texas. Well, I am not here to rub it in your face, David, not David. Certainly, I'm not going to do that. I appreciate the bridge comment. That is funny. Even K-State's, the official K-State sports account got into the action after the game and said they tweeted wins greater than bridges. So there's been a lot of piling on about Iowa State's $10 million bridge that has been built. But look, I will say this, David, you guys got a hell of a defense. I mean, and that's what I would say. I would just caution Texas about that Iowa State defense because I know they're riding high. I know they're really confident. I know Quinn Ewers looks like the real deal. He absolutely does. I mean, I will not take that away from Texas at all. But Iowa State does have a really, really salty defense, and that could be interesting if they get any semblance of offense. But that really is the problem, David. And I don't need to tell you this. Anybody in the state of Iowa that's a college football fan, basically right now, you can just blanket statement: you do not have enough offense in your life. You do not have enough offense in your life at all because Iowa State is kind of a carbon copy of Iowa right now. And then, by the way, today, tons of drama at Iowa with Brian Ferentz and his press conference and some of the things he said. At least you're not that. It's not quite that bad. It's a little bit better. A little bit better. I mean, I would much rather have Hunter Deckers than I would Petrus, right? Spencer Petrus at Iowa. So you've at least got that. But I appreciate you being a good sport about it. That is rough to have to lose that game. Lose that game by 1 point when now, as a K-State fan, I look at it and say K-State really left 10 points on the field easy. You have the touchdown. Malik Knowles gets the ball punched out at the 1 yard line as he's jogging into the end zone, which was an incredible play, but not something that you see a lot and should have been a touchdown as long as you're protecting the ball, and then missed a 32-yard field goal. So I'm looking at it like that should have been 20-9, K-State winning handily. But if you're an Iowa State fan, you turn that around and say, man, if Xavier Hutchinson, who's our stud, our guy, makes one catch, we're in field goal range, getting ready to kick the potential game-winning field goal with a guy who's already 3 for 3. So it was that close. It was that close. If it's any consolation to you at all, David, not David Z, that game took years off my life. Years off my life, and I had pretty much zero fun outside of the first play and the last play. Victory formation at the end. It wasn't the first play, but first drive, and the touchdown pass to start the game from Adrian Martinez. Outside of that, it was not fun at all. I did not enjoy it. So I didn't take as much satisfaction out of it as I really would have liked to. Hopefully that can lift your spirits a little bit there, David, not David. What's up, Julius? Julius, much appreciate the support as always. Far too kind. Very, very generous. Thank you. Julius says, howdy, John. I'm just here for the support. I don't want to think about BYU right now. Shorts all year. Would like to ask everyone to like the video. So that's my comment. Well, thank you, Julius. That is, not only are you extremely generous as always, but you use your time and space in front of everybody. You use the platform that you have to tell everybody to like the video. So that is awesome. Thank you. And look, I think I talked about this a little bit on the last live. I was keeping an eye on BYU Notre Dame. It was on a second screen while I was watching K-State Iowa State. And I mean, I thought it seemed like a hell of a game and a hell of a comeback by BYU to get right there. And I actually was listening to the Yahoo College Football podcast earlier, the College Football Inquirer, Yahoo's podcast. And like Dan Wetzel was going on about how great of a game he thought it was, how entertained he was by both squads, and certainly had a healthy amount of respect for BYU, and said it just seemed like a great atmosphere there in Vegas, which I don't doubt that at all. Because I know BYU fans were traveling there, and I'm sure there were plenty of Notre Dame fans that showed up as well. Notre Dame had it's a cool uniform battle. Like aesthetically, it was very pleasing to watch out of the corner of my eye down in the bottom screen. But yes, I get the frustration there with the loss. I mean, I certainly would have loved to see it. I'm annoyed now that it seems like Notre Dame has found their footing a little bit when they were wobbly and could have been on the ropes and knocked out at the beginning of year one of the Marcus Freeman era. So. Anyway, sorry about the loss, Julius. It will get better. I promise. There's more opportunities coming up because that schedule is not easy, as we've discussed ad nauseum here on this channel. So got to pick yourself right back up for a reeling Arkansas team. Arkansas is reeling. They are reeling. Very, very gettable. And that'd be a fun win for you guys. So pulling for you there. Very much so pulling for you there. What's up, Nick? Appreciate the donation as always, Nick. Thank you for being here. Nick says, interesting that Vegas has Oklahoma State as an underdog against TCU, but then has us with higher odds to win the Big 12. Does TCU have a more difficult remaining schedule than the Pokes? Hard to believe. Go Pokes and go Big 12. Yeah, that is a weird distinction. It's interesting you point that out because, yes, Oklahoma State. Now, the odds are very jumbled at the top, right? So, according to Caesars, it's Texas plus 240, TCU plus 280, Oklahoma State plus 300, K-State plus 300. So you have four teams that are very, very close at the top of the Big 12. Basically, they view it the same way I pointed out. Like that was my top tier of the league. Vegas sees it the same way. That very much those four teams are all right there. I will just say, Nick, as far as this game goes, and this is no disrespect to TCU, no disrespect to the Frogs at all. And it doesn't have anything to do with their game last week at Kansas. I came away from that game sensing that both of those teams were pretty good. I had somebody in my mentions at one point on Twitter saying that was, like a 5-7 team there. I was like, I didn't see a 5-7 team on the field on either side. Those seem like 2 7 or 8 plus win teams at least. And TCU is just lights out right now with that offense. And I am buying that there is something to like, hey, there was a lot of talent there. Gary Patterson had just kind of run his course. And I don't feel, it feels a little mean perhaps to say the game had passed him by. But I think as far as being a dynamic head coach, unless he was going to change some of his ways, it had. And so now you have Sonny Dykes in with a different approach, rejuvenates the offense, rejuvenates Duggan. I get it. I see it. And I know that they have some dudes. I mean, my God, Quentin Johnson, right? The receiver, that guy. Nuts. So TCU has some dudes for sure. But I feel like this is just a game that I steal from the Solid Verbal a lot. But they talk about these games that, was it Ashanti who had that song where she said, it was What's Love? It's about us. It's about trust, babe. It's about trust, babe. And in this spot, I trust Mike Gundy and I trust Oklahoma State more than I do TCU. And some of that is unfair. It's unfair, frankly, to Sonny Dykes because he hasn't been in this league. He has not been in this position to really unearn my trust, so to speak. It's more what I've seen from TCU post Trevon Boykin. But there's just been, enough inconsistency, enough up and down that I have a hard time feeling confident that they would be able to get this win in this spot against an Oklahoma State team and program that is very much used to being in these games, used to being in this spot, and finding different ways to win. And I feel like Oklahoma State can right now. Spencer Sanders is playing very well, protecting the ball better. I think they can win a shootout with him in the offense. I think they can also obviously win a rock fight with the defense that they have. I like the different ways that they can go about winning a game. So I'm with you. That seems like a weird line, but I also would say that when you see those lines, sometimes I tend to lean into those because Vegas knows something. I mean, they build those big buildings for a reason, right? I mean, I could throw you every Vegas platitude out there right now. And it does feel like there's something fishy about that line there. But if you're asking me just from taking Vegas out of the picture, what I would be thinking about this game is slight lean to Oklahoma State just because I trust program and head coach there more based on what they've been here recently. Robert, thank you for the donation, Robert. Robert says, Tom Fernelli from CBS Sports, quote, the Big 12 is the best conference in college football, and I would like it injected directly into my veins every Saturday. Tom Fernelli, what a quote there. Now, I like Tom Fernelli. I followed him on Twitter for a long while, but that's a hell of a quote right there. Brett Yormark needs to get that thing plastered out on Twitter and everywhere he can. All the Big 12 social channels, everywhere you can find it. The Big 12 is the best conference in college football, and I would like it injected directly into my veins every Saturday. I'm here for that, man. I'm here for that. Let me go pull up what I just saw right before I popped on here on Twitter. It was some power rankings for conferences. Yeah, so this is according to the K Ford ratings. What are the K Ford ratings, you ask? I don't really know, but I see people reference them on Twitter every now and then. The K Ford ratings say average conference ratings. The Big 12 is number one at 79.09. I assume that's on a scale of 100. What exactly does that number mean? Also, I don't know. 79.09. The SEC is number 2 at 76.85. The Big Ten, number 3 at 68.68. 62.04 for the ACC, 61.55 for the Pac-12. So no real surprise there, except for the Big 12 being out in front of everybody. Big 12 being better than the SEC. I will say this, Alabama looks more flawed than typical this year, and I understand Bryce Young was out last week, but Alabama looks more flawed than typical. Georgia has had really big moments. They've also almost lost at Missouri, a team that I watched K-State beat 40-12. So maybe the SEC is a little bit down at the top from what they typically would be. I still would trust Alabama and Georgia more there and say that the SEC is the better conference. But the Big 12 has the problem with the Big 10 obviously is Ohio State, but I'm not buying Michigan. I'm not buying Michigan. I'm not buying Penn State as being like truly elite teams. I would take the top of the Big 12 against those squads for sure. So if we're talking about who's the second best conference in college football, open up that discussion wide for the Big 12. And if we're talking about the deepest, most consistently deep conference in the country, I don't know that there's any real discussion about that. Top to bottom, you're not going to find anything tougher. If we're talking about Oklahoma being in the discussion for worst team in the conference, I know they've been a disaster, but that tells you something about where this conference is at right now. So I love it. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I would like to say that I'm John Kurtz, and I personally endorse that message. I approve this message that the Big 12 is the best conference in college football, and I would like it injected directly into my veins every Saturday. Even though I just told you into the day probably is the SEC, I will still endorse Tom Fernelli's statement. Absolutely will. So love it. Travis, I like it. You guys are bringing it strong today. I promise you here, and I'm gonna try and get back to time stamping these things in the description. I know I've been a little lazy with that lately. Those of you who are like sitting here screaming like, where's the news about the TV deal? I know we're talking a lot of football here based on the donations coming in. I promise you, I will get to soon the TV info from Brett Yormark. But Travis's name, Travis Fire Tom Manning Powers, is clearly an Iowa State fan here. It was not a real fan of the offensive coordinator. And Travis says, ISU play calling is Brian Ferentz. Brian Ferencian with 2-yard passes on 3rd and 15, despite having talent to take deep shots. That overreaction, or we lack talent? I think it's complicated. I think it's complicated with the Iowa State offense. Again, I don't know it on an in-depth level like you would to know the complexities of Tom Manning and his system and how much to really put on that. I'll just tell you what I see. What I see right now after the last 2 weeks, I watched a lot of Iowa State football. Obviously, the entire K-State game and pretty much the entire Kansas game right before that. It is perplexing to me, and I, as a K-State fan, the Tulane loss was all K-State having 3rd and 7 and throwing a 3-yard drag route, or it's something 2 or 3 yards behind the first down or in front of the first down marker. So I get that frustration, and Iowa State does a ton of it. It seems like the general idea is we got to get the ball out quick and just let our playmakers try and make you miss in space. And K-State is a particularly good tackling team in space. Josh Hayes, who was all over the field on Saturday, is one of the best open field tacklers I've seen play at K-State in years. So I think that strategy may not have been as effective against K-State. But the problem is, Deckers, who I think has a lot of arm talent, I think there's something there. But he gets so spooked by any sort of pressure that he'll just throw the ball as soon as you don't even have to be at the quarterback, but you get I've made the joke like social distancing. He seems to still be a fan of social distancing. You get within a couple feet of him and bam, he's just gonna rocket the ball out to whoever. There's not a real sense of pocket presence to me from Deckers. So I would guess that that's a part of the strategy there is just, we don't feel like we can protect him / have him hang in the pocket long enough at this stage of development that we have to just dump it out short. The injuries at running back have also hurt, right? And I'm blanking on his name, but the number 1 kid, clearly he played, but clearly didn't seem at 100%. So not having the full gamut of options at running back definitely hurts Iowa State too. But I get the frustration, especially when you have Xavier Hutchinson. And I kept saying to my buddy Cole, who does a podcast with me that I was watching the game with, I'm worried about K-State has a huge corner in Julius Brents. They have a short corner in Echo Boydo, and I was worried about Echo Boydo being matched up on Xavier Hutchinson and just lobbing the ball downfield, not only for the jump ball situation, but to generate pass interference calls. I mean, if I were Manning in Iowa State, I would try a little bit more of that. Just if you can get it, if you can get man coverage. I know K-State was bringing in a lot of pressure. Sure, there were times where there's man out there, and you could just lob it up and hope for a PI, or your guy goes up and makes a play and just mosses the ball, basically. So, yes, I get the frustration, but I do think there are things working against him as far as that goes. But, hey, happy that you guys didn't quite have enough. Happy that you guys didn't quite have enough on Saturday. I certainly am. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel says, hey, you know what, Daniel? I appreciate this. First of all, thank you for the donation. Extremely generous. Daniel says, a little off topic, but how about them Chiefs? Let me tell you a little story quickly about the Chiefs game. That I was so angry. It took me like a solid hour after the game just to like calm down. And that was after when the game started, I was busy. I'm trying to remember what I was doing. I was trying to get some work done and like some things done around the apartment as I watched the game. And I figured, well, it's the Raiders. The Chiefs should be able to roll in this. I can kind of watch a little more casually than I normally would while I get some things done. And then all of a sudden it's 17-0. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm kind of just like checked out, like, all right, whatever. They're going to lose a terrible game here to the Raiders. Let me just get my stuff done so I'm not in a horrible mood and have nothing done by the end of the night. And then the Chris Jones thing happens, right? The roughing the passer call, which was just ridiculous. And then it just flipped a switch in me. I was enraged. I was mad for like an hour, even after the Chiefs had started the comeback after that, and it became pretty clear they were going to take the lead. I was still mad about it, still sitting there fuming about the call. And then about the time I got over that, you have the 3rd and 3 play at the end of the game where Andy Reid draws up a shot play to McCole Hardman. And anyway, I got just as mad about that. And then he punts, and I was just as mad about that, but they found a way to win. So, yes, how about them Chiefs? I'm with it. They won. That's great. But, man, I could do without some of the stress that I was put through with that game on Monday night. Ema Tom, I don't see a message, Ema Tom. I see that it's been retracted. So if you do have something that you want to add, make sure and let me know. I see Robbie says some of us Cat fans have frustration about our offense as well. Well, here's the thing with the K-State offense. And look, if K-State is going to compete for and win the Big 12 championship, which again I mentioned, they have tied for the 3rd best title odds with Oklahoma State right now and just barely behind TCU and Texas, according to Caesars. That's at least according to Caesars. If K-State's going to win the Big 12 or play in that game in Arlington, I do think the offense will have to take maybe like a half step up, at least from where they're at right now. They're very explosive. It's kind of the opposite of what I'm used to from a K-State offense. Very explosive. They've lacked some consistency. Probably need to up that consistency just a little bit to make me feel comfortable about that. And they're about to run through a really tough part of the schedule here over the next 4 weeks. So yes, I wouldn't say that I'm like frustrated with the offense. I think it's developing. I think it's coming along, and especially the way that they threw the ball. The score is not going to tell that story, but they threw the ball a lot better against Iowa State on Saturday, which gives me more confidence. It was Adrian Martinez's best game through the air of the year. And if you just have the Knowles touchdown, I mean, then there's a touchdown. It's 17-9. You see the 259 yards or whatever it was that Martinez put up. You'd be feeling a little bit better about it. So I'm certainly not panicking about the K-State offense right now. Ema Tom. What's up, Ema Tom? All right, so Ema Tom got in here. I get it. Okay. Ema Tom, here we go. Thank you for the donation. Thank you. Ema Tom says, worst teams in the Big 12 have collectively boat raced Nebraska, beat Virginia Tech, and should have beat Pitt and out Iowa to Iowa. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it. Virginia Tech's not a great team, but man, yeah, West Virginia beat the crap out of them on the road. Inner Sandman notwithstanding, didn't hold them back. Oklahoma looks like they may be the worst team in the Big 12 right now. Absolutely clubbed Nebraska, who's tied for first in the Big 10 West. Pitt, pretty good team out of the ACC. Yes, West Virginia should have beaten them. Absolutely. We can all remember back to that game, right? Opening week of the season on that Thursday night, West Virginia should have won that game. And then, yes, Iowa State did beat Iowa as well. So that's a really good case for the strength of the Big 12. I'm with you on that. Absolutely. Michael, appreciate the donation, Michael. Michael says, quick check-in. Wife's B-Day. We'll watch later. Peace out, BYU. Thank you, Michael. Happy birthday. Tell the wife I said happy birthday. Maybe she's listening right now. Happy birthday, Michael's wife. And thank you for letting him stop by at least to say, hey, here in the chat real quick. I appreciate that. I'm here for the people. I'm here for the people. Okay. Yes. All right. Steven. Thank you, Steven. I was just about to get to literally was just scrolling up on my notes to get to the TV part. And now you have contributed to steer everybody in that direction. So thank you for doing that. Perfect timing. My guy Steven says, what is this news on the Big 12 talks to ESPN and Fox? So thank you for the donation, Steven. And let me get right to that. So this is from Forbes, Adam Zagoria, who was like Zag's blog was like a big recruiting site for a long time in college basketball. I remember following it a lot, like in the early 2010s. It feels like I haven't seen as much lately, but he wrote this article with quotes from Brett Yormark, and it says the Big 12 has had, quote, meaningful conversations with Fox and ESPN about a new TV contract. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said during an interview Wednesday in Manhattan. That'd be Manhattan, New York, not Manhattan, Kansas. Quote, I've had meaningful conversations with ESPN and with Fox over the last 30 days about do we accelerate that? Do we think about doing something now? So Brett Yormark is saying that these are not just frivolous conversations, which was really the Pac-12 spin on things when the Big 12 put out the statement, hey, we are discussing things here. We're kind of opening up, not an official discussion window, but we are opening up discussion and talks with our TV partners about doing something different here and getting a deal done early. Brett Yormark is saying, look, these are meaningful conversations. This is not something just frivolous. These are meaningful combos that are happening right now. It says the current contract runs through the end of the 2024 football season and has an exclusive negotiating window in February 2024. Quote, those conversations are ongoing, said Yormark, who took over this summer as Big 12 commissioner. Whether we get to an early deal or not, I don't know. But he added, if I can't get a deal done with them, we'll just wait until February of 2024. But we've had great conversations over the last 30 days. I think both realize the potential of this conference. They want to be partners as we build our brands, and we'll see whether we can get to an early extension or not. So he's hedging a little bit there, right? He's hedging. But to me, the bigger takeaway from all of that, or the biggest takeaway from all of that, is him kind of subtly nudging back at anybody who thought, well, this is the Big 12 really just this is the marketing arm, right? Like, oh, we're having these talks, but then ESPN put out the statement like, hey, we're not officially doing anything. It was kind of a battle of semantics. It was a battle of semantics. And the Pac-12 side was saying, well, look, the semantics would say here, no, you're not actually doing this. ESPN says you're not right now. And the Big 12 was more like, well, I mean, look, we're just opening the door for discussions here. And Yormark is just trying to accentuate here, like, these are meaningful discussions where we're actually talking about, like, can we get this done? Can we get a deal done earlier than when we are scheduled to come up for the TV deal? That's how I take it here. Again, it's trying to be aggressive and control the narrative, which I like. I like that a lot because it would be very easy for people to just kind of laugh off that one statement that was like a paragraph or maybe two that the Big 12 put out when they first started having these discussions. It could be laughed away if you don't get out there and keep beating it into people's minds that these are significant discussions. We are having these. That is a real thing. So, and I believe Yormark that he's certainly trying to be aggressive here and get that deal done early, or worst case scenario, at least get some like quotable numbers. Because again, back to the realignment discussion, nobody in Pac-12 country wants to think that there's any chance that the four corner schools would jump without the Big Ten grabbing somebody first. And while that still seems like the most likely scenario, if the Big 12 were to get some really significant numbers, like a more guesstimate kind of concrete number, even if it's not an official offer from the TV networks right now, that can help you. That can help you in trying to jar free. If you can try and pry loose one of the four corner schools, if you're just trying to chip away, that would be one way to do it. If you can use these negotiations and these conversations to get those sort of numbers. It says as ESPN, I'm back to the article now. As ESPN pointed out then, the expedited negotiations allow the Big 12 to potentially get tangible future revenue numbers for both its member schools and potential additions. So there you go. Also can continue to build on some of the unity that the conference has. If you're showing people much better TV revenue numbers, that can help the unity of the conference. A little less in terms of the wandering eye. Obviously, that's always going to be there for the Big Ten and the SEC, no matter what number the Big 12 gets back, because it's not going to be up to that level. But you get the idea. It could provide some comfort to everybody, which then I think just strengthens that bond that everybody has. Now, here is something very important, and this you could debate whether or not this should be the headline. Whereas the headline of the article is the Big 12 is having meaningful conversations with Fox and ESPN, you could say that the headline is this Yormark quote, which is he says, quote, I can tell you that from a TV perspective, we'll go up in value. We're not going backwards. We're not staying flat. Whether we can get an early extension or not, we're looking at increased numbers, which are indicative of the value of this conference and our members. So he is saying this next TV deal will be worth more. And that is very confident and very significant. Okay, because Yormark, even if you perceive him as a bit of a wheeler and dealer, as a bit of a marketing whiz and trying to market this league as much, and hey, be smart to say that, you can't say that and then come back with a worse TV deal. I mean, not even just externally, but internally. If you're going to say that publicly, you better deliver on it. And that's a guy that is not a guy who's going to say that. If he's having meaningful conversations, I'm sure he's taking from those. Yeah, the numbers are going to go up. We'll be okay. You can't say that and then come back in good faith to your members and be like, well, no, actually, that wasn't true. And I don't think that even if he is a bit of a wheeler and dealer, I don't think he's a scammer. So I take, long story short, I put a lot of stock into those comments there from Yormark. And we've heard, surely that's been the message internally for a while now, because you've heard some of these athletic directors that have talked. I know Mac Rhodes does the show with Smokey and those guys on Sikkim 365. ADs that have been speaking have been saying, I think even Gene Taylor at K-State may have said at one point, we expect it's going to be more. So that has been kind of the narrative internally, but now you're seeing Yormark actually publicly come out and say that. And, whether or not I started to say and think when I first read that, like, okay, well, that's probably going to be bigger than the Pac-12s almost no matter what, if it's going to be more than the Big 12's current deal. But the wild card there is Amazon. The wild card there is Amazon, where the Pac-12, and I can see this case where Amazon would overpay because they don't care. They have ulterior motives here, which is just getting people to sign up for Amazon Prime. So they may overpay for football. It's not just to them about pure viewership numbers. They have other business reasons that they want people coming to watch those games and having live sports. So I can see the case that they would overpay for it. And the Pac-12 is really running with that right now, especially now as the negotiating window, the exclusive window with ESPN and Fox has come to pass and no deal was reached. Now it's all in. Like the Pac-12 talk right now is like all in on, hey, let's go ahead and build up this Amazon thing and see how much money we could get out of them and how much extra money we could get out of them. So this is kind of the Big 12 coming back on the other side of it. The Big 12 being like, all right, that's cool. We're going to get more money than we currently have, and we're already having meaningful conversations with Fox and ESPN. So it's kind of a fascinating war of how both conferences are trying to market themselves right now with all of this. I see Lorenzo. What's up, Lorenzo? Thank you for the donation, my friend. Lorenzo says, I'm really curious about what revenue and relationships this New York trip will bring. Yeah, well, I mean, I think there are already a lot of relationships there, obviously, from Yormark. Like I would anticipate when I saw the story from Zagoria and Forbes, I know Zagoria has been like a New York, he's like an East Coast guy. So I figure there's probably an existing relationship there already. Being able to get on with Mike Greenberg at ESPN, Yormark probably has relationships that are allowing him the opportunity to do that. But yeah, hopefully he's building on that more. And just being able to get a little bit of press out there and be aggressive and do the car wash at ESPN and all those sorts of things is very, very beneficial. And I just love that it's a commissioner willing to do that. Bob Bowlesby, I defend him more than most people do. But one thing he was not was somebody that was going to go out of his way to do a car wash in New York and when I say car wash, that's typically when you're just going from place to place, different outlet to different outlet. Or if you go to ESPN, different show to different show. That wasn't really Bowlesby's thing, especially to do it proactively. I'm sure if he were asked, he would do it. But to do it proactively, that seems to be a Yormark thing and something that can be really, really, really helpful. More from the article. The Big 12 countered a year ago with planned additions of Houston, BYU, Cincinnati, and UCF. All four schools will join for the upcoming academic year. Yormark says, quote, for the next 2 years, it'll be great when Texas and Oklahoma, or it'll be great, and then Texas and Oklahoma will leave. We just keep going on, keep building what we're building. Yormark maintained he's open to further expansion going forward if it makes sense. The Big 12 has been linked to Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. He said, quote, if it's additive, we'll pursue it. I look at every opportunity and possibility and where it is additive and how it can create value, whether it's on the business side, whether it's expansion, whether it's the brand, whatever it is. Yormark added, and when you think of expansion, it's got to be the right cultural fit. We are as aligned as I think this conference has ever been. So that's a pretty important line at the end there, too. I think most of us have been feeling that. That's certainly the impression, call me the mighty, mighty Boston's, the impression that I get is that the Big 12 has been as unified as they really have almost ever been here lately. But Yormark, again, is speaking that publicly and feeling comfortable enough to say that publicly that, yeah, this league is feeling pretty good, feeling pretty together right now. Interesting thing here, right? Interesting thing here about the future of the Big 12 basketball tournament. This would be like the one thing that I bristled at a little bit in this whole article, and frankly, probably of the Yormark era so far. But so it says, as for the location of future Big 12 tournaments, Scott Drew joked that his kids wanted to be at Disney World. I'm not sure where Scott Drew came in here, but he had a couple Scott Drew quotes. It says the league is committed to Kansas City through 2025, but Yormark said he's open to other opportunities. Quote, everything is on the table, he said, noting that the ACC and Atlantic 10 both hold their preseason or postseason tournaments rather at Barclays Center. I just love the tournament being in Kansas City. Now, I'm a Kansas City guy. I live blocks away from Sprint Center, where the Big 12 basketball tournament is. So I will admit my bias on that front. But it is such a cool event here. People care about it so deeply here. I've seen it in Oklahoma City and in Dallas, and it was just sterile and not enough people there and not the event that it is here. My hope and thought is like maybe that changes if Yormark sees it up close and personal, what it's actually like. But I guess I say that to also provide an open mind. I will have an open mind with those comments at least and be like, look, if he's trying to market this league as much as possible and he thinks there's a better way to market it by taking it somewhere else, I kind of have to by nature be open to that, because that's been my whole take on Yormark the whole time is I love a guy that's going to try and do big things and try and take it different places and try and market it as much as he can. So if I'm going to say that, I have to put a little bit of faith, I suppose, in Yormark on that front. So I will do that. I will do that. But man, it would crush me inside. It would crush me inside if that thing leaves Kansas City. It is such a cool event here. So we'll see. That was something that had not been on my radar at all before I saw this article today. Goes on to say the Big 12 likely won't catch the SEC or Big 10 in revenue, but Yormark says he's focused on solidifying and strengthening the conference's brand. He's made several key hires, including appointing Scott Draper as vice president for football. Quote, last Yormark quote for you here. Says, quote, I'm less worried about the Big 10 and SEC than I am about reaching our fullest potential as a conference and doing the things that I think we need to do in order to be viable. But not just viable, to be successful. I like that quote. Now, I don't think anybody in their right mind, any commissioner in the position of the Big 12s would step up to the plate and be like, well, we've got to keep pace with the Big 10 and the SEC, because that's a fool's errand. The cat's out of the bag. The toothpaste is out of the tube. Like you're not going to get there right now. But you can become the best Big 12 you can be. You can position yourself to be the third best conference. You can position yourself to be the best of the rest, which the Big 12 is doing a hell of a job right now so far through the 2022 season. And so I do think that needs to be where your focus is. Be you. You're not going to be the SEC. You're not going to be the Big 10. You won't be the SEC with Bama and Georgia. You won't be the Big 10 with a massive brand and a great team in Ohio State, and then a bunch of overinflated, really boring, stylistic football teams that are in the Big 10, which is basically what it is. Like, Penn State, Michigan being billed as this huge game this weekend. I just, yawn. Give me Oklahoma State, TCU all day, every day, twice on Sunday over Penn State, Michigan. But you're not going to be the Big 10. You won't be able to be. So be yourself, be the Big 12, embrace what you are. And that seems to be what Yormark and the league are doing. So a lot of good stuff in that article from Adam Zagoria and Forbes for sure. Again, I'll remind you, I've got probably 10 to 15 more minutes here. If you want to make your voice heard here on the chat, there are over 330 people in here right now. So I can't read everything that's happening in the chat. If you want to ensure that you get on the show tonight, you can donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you do that. It will pin it at the top for me. Also, it's a way to support the work that I'm doing here, bringing you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis on the channel. If you want to support the channel but don't want to contribute money, you can just simply hit the like button. Just click the like button on the video. That helps me out as well. That is always very much appreciated. And if you're watching this taped after the fact, it's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you'd like to support the channel on Venmo. All right, so we do have this. If you want a little bit more realignment talk, one of the things that's been going around today is Kevin Warren kind of backing off the aggressive comments that he had at Big Ten football media days, at Big Ten basketball media days. I'm going to read you straight from John Canzano. All right. I know. But I'm going to read you from John Canzano's article about all this, like his take on this. So I want to give you like the Pac-12 spin on this and what they're saying. He says Warren spoke with reporters on Tuesday in Minneapolis, this time as a part of his conference's basketball media day. Football was still on everyone's mind, but it was a series of comments Warren made to Scott Docterman of The Athletic that caught my attention. Said Warren, quote, "Because of all the conference movement that's going on, is it always somewhere in the atmosphere? Sure. Generally speaking, I don't believe we are in a position that we have to go out and aggressively try to recruit any other schools." So that is much different than the tone at Big Ten Media Days, where he was basically like, yeah, we might still do it. We're not going to let you be stable Pac-12. We might still have an interest there. And then all of a sudden, right after that, there's a Brett McMurphy report about, well, here's the list of teams that they're still interested in, which, does not seem to be like a crazy coincidence there. This is Canzano now speaking. He says, "It sounds to me like Warren and the Big Ten are backing off for now. I've long believed that Notre Dame is the only no-brainer addition left for the Big Ten." It says Warren cast a far more measured tone on Tuesday. And I'm sorry if I said it was yesterday at Big Ten Basketball Media Day. It says Warren cast a far more measured tone on Tuesday. He steered the focus to the conference's current members and its network partners. It was a dramatically different scene than the celebratory act from the summer, first at Media Day and then in an interview with HBO's Real Sports. Forgot about that. There was the Real Sports interview also where Warren opened up that door for further expansion. The article goes on to say, this Warren appeared interested in managing public expectations. Also, he sounded more mindful of the college sports ecosystem, pointing out that several other conferences, including the Pac-12, were engaged in media rights negotiations. Quote, "I'm always mindful of what's going on at different conferences and the different markets and what's happening. But right now, we've got to make sure we take care of our business." One last line here from Canzano. He says, "The Pac-12 is currently engaged in selling its media rights. After that, I think the conference will add at least one member via expansion. I'll have more on this in the coming days." Which the timing of that seems interesting. So they're going to get through the media contract and then add teams. That seems a little backwards almost, unless it's going to be, hey, in the negotiations, it's just worked out with a clause in the contract anticipating expansion. I don't know. I'm sure, we'll read whatever Canzano's going to say about that. But I would I would caution the Pac-12 and anybody in Pac-12 country to be a little bit careful there in buying too heavy into what Kevin Warren just cares about. I mean, basically the narrative there is Kevin Warren doesn't want to kill off the Pac-12 because he cares enough about the sport to not do that right now. I would be careful with that because, man, he signed up for the Alliance. He did that awkward press conference for the Alliance and then went and snatched up UCLA and USC just like that from right out under the Pac-12, and then followed it up with comments at Big Ten Media Day that maybe they weren't meant to directly destabilize the Pac-12, but he certainly had to know that that would be the effect of them. So I wouldn't trust him. I certainly wouldn't trust him if I were the Pac-12. And I saw some of the Big Ten country response on Twitter today was like, well, if anybody thinks that the reason expansion isn't happening right now is just because Kevin Warren's like some great dude who doesn't want to kill the Pac-12 is not paying attention. And I thought, yeah, I would agree with that. I don't. Now, yes, the SEC seemed to have kind of come to that conclusion as well, but the SEC has not been as predatory, I would say, in their nature with all of this, at least recently. It's the Big Ten that added more recently, and then the Big Ten that followed it up with more comments like that. And it was Warren that was involved in the alliance. The SEC didn't have some alliance with other people. So Warren has shown to be the guy that's really not going to care about any of that stuff at all. And these things can change very quickly. So I don't know that I would be throwing a giant parade if I were the Pac-12, but I can understand breathing a bit of a sigh of relief, at least for right now in the immediate term, the short term. And yes, if you are talking about TV negotiations, I understand the angle of Warren is doing the Pac-12 a solid, at least for now, to try and give them an opportunity to get this TV deal signed. Does it help that? Yeah, probably a little bit. I'd be curious what's being said behind closed doors, what would be said in boardrooms and meetings about all this, and what Warren would be telling Oregon and Washington, who were already, it was already reported, had basically exploratory committees here trying to figure out what's going on there and whether or not this could work out. What's being said there, I would be very curious as opposed to what's being said publicly. But yes, I would think it seems like the idea would be that could help out the Pac 12, getting Oregon and Washington to sign on the dotted line for at least a short term TV contract, if not a medium term TV contract. So interesting stuff there. Interesting stuff from Kevin Warren. Charles, man, you guys are reading my mind tonight, like just about where I was going next. Charles, thank you for the donation. Charles says, what about the Big 12 TV ratings being pretty impressive this last weekend? If it's all about eyeballs, we may be in pretty good shape. You're damn right, Charles. Man, I mean, Kansas TCU did really well. And that makes a lot of sense because they got the college game day bump. The shocking number was Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. That's an FS1 game. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech on FS1. In 2021, the Big 12 averaged 480,000 eyeballs on an FS1 game. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech had 1.6 million people watching. 1.6 million people watched Oklahoma State, Texas Tech in what was a really good football game, very entertaining. Got to see Baron Morton unleash the young kid at Texas Tech. That was the most watched Big 12 game on FS1 in 5 years. 2017, the last time the Big 12 had a game that had that many eyeballs on it on FS1. I didn't see what game that actually was. My speculation would be that it involved Oklahoma or Texas. It doesn't now. And we saw the 4 million number from the Big 12 championship game last year with Oklahoma State and Baylor. Now we're seeing Oklahoma State playing Texas Tech, and that's generating massive numbers on FS1. It's up, if you're curious about the math here, up 240% from the Big 12 average on FS1 in 2021. Meanwhile, TCU KU, another FS1 game, got 1.3 million viewers. 1.3, so just off 1.6. That's up 173% from that 2021 average. Now, TCU KU probably gets a little bit of help from Bedlam being such a snooze fest. I mean, that game was over very early. And obviously, College Game Day is a major boost to Kansas there and TCU in helping get the viewership on that game. But whatever it is, you got people there and played a really entertaining game. I mean, that's the other thing. It's been an entertaining brand of football in a lot of these games. Oklahoma State Tech was a very entertaining game. TCU Kansas was a really entertaining game. High level catch making going on. You have the drama of Jalen Daniels going down and then Jason Bean coming in and playing really well in the second half. You got the storyline of Max Duggan. You got Quentin Johnson just doing crazy things. Yeah, it's been good. Okay, Jeremy, I see some strong words here from Jeremy. I just caught this out of the corner of my eye. Jesus, John, you say you're not going to be the Big Ten, and then you're rolling out numbers that suggest that maybe you're being a naysayer. I have no idea what that means, Jeremy. No idea what that means. Just saw some strong language in there, and it got my attention. Absolutely no idea what you mean there. If you want some more context, Gambling Gauchos, great follow. And I had someone asking me this week, if you want the TV numbers on a weekly basis of what every Big 12 game does, Gambling Gauchos will tweet them out. So follow my guys. Gambling Gauchos, one of the best Big 12 Twitter follows out there that you could possibly have. More context on how good the 1.6 million number is for an FS1 broadcast. In 2017, Ohio State, Nebraska drew 2.4 million on FS1 in the 7:30 window. So that's night game, FS1, two major brands, Ohio State and Nebraska. They were 2.4. Nebraska, Penn State drew 1.56 that same year on FS1 at 4 o'clock. That Oklahoma State, Texas Tech game in the same window, FS1 got more viewers, 1.6. So very similar to a Nebraska Penn State game. Okay, it was Bedlam. So Bedlam was the only 2017 FS1 game that beat last weekend's Dust Bowl, as they're affectionately calling Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, which I do like. So it was Bedlam. So yeah, Bedlam, it involved Oklahoma and obviously is a rivalry game. So there's that. There is that. I see Jeremy. How hard was that to follow? Well, part of it, Jeremy, is like, if you could spell your correctly, that would be nice. YOU''RE. You say didn't have a space. I mean, could you run spell check on it first for me, please? I mean, that would be a nice start. That would be a nice start. Last little thing I want to touch on here, and this is basically like your 2 to 5 minute warning before I get out of here. Um, Last thing I'm going to touch on is the Jalen Daniels thing, because this is important for the Big 12 and important for um, potentially the Big 12 title race. We'll see. Kansas, I think, is going to have to hang around with Jason Bean playing well for a little while anyway, no matter what. But this was crazy if you missed it on Tuesday. So uh, there's a report out there now. What I have been hearing was like 2 to 6 weeks for Jalen Daniels. Not that I'm the most connected guy in the world, but that seemed to be pretty common knowledge, like not a very well kept secret. That wide range, these AC sprains or separations, the issues with that, it just depends on how severe it is as to how long it'll hold you out. Um, and then out of nowhere on Tuesday afternoon, Zach Boyer, who was listed in his bio as a Lawrence Journal World contributor, has since removed that because the Lawrence Journal World basically distanced themselves from him after he put out this tweet. But he tweeted out, well, Jalen Daniels is out for the year. It's a tough blow. And Zach Boyer is somebody who used to work in the athletic department at Kansas, I was later told. So I think a lot of people put a lot of, by the time I got to the tweet, it had like 1,000 quote tweets on it. So I was just like, all right, I guess this is legit. Like, people are really buying. Like, Jalen Daniels must legitimately be out for the year, which was kind of shocking to me. But then Jalen Daniels quote tweeted it himself and said, "Well, that's news to me." Lance Leipold and KU put out a tweet of Jalen Daniels just hanging out in his office, and it said like, "Hey, look who just came by my office." I mean, it was very well done by Kansas to basically be like, "Look, no, that is not accurate." Makes me wonder a lot of things. Was that, an intentional leak to try and weed somebody out? Are they, my mind thinking of the media side of this went a bunch of different places, but it's good news ultimately for Kansas and for the conference. If Jalen Daniels is now developing a name in college football, he is a stud of a player, phenomenal player, and just helps the profile of the league if he's going to be out there. I guess, if Jason Bean's going to throw 4 touchdown passes every half like he did in the second half against TCU, maybe it's a moot point. But I do think Jalen Daniels is the better quarterback of the two, quite obviously, and certainly would love to see him. But I do not want to see anybody miss time for injury, rival or not, any of that stuff. But it was just a crazy saga to see all of that play out in real time the way that it did. So Boyer changed his bio and removed Lawrence Journal World and all that stuff, but has still kept the tweet up. So I mean, who knows? I would assume you're going to see Jalen Daniels back at some point, but I do not think you'll see him this weekend against Oklahoma, which, as much as Oklahoma State TCU is a great game, I think the most fascinating game is Oklahoma Kansas, just in terms of what happens. What happens? Kansas playing with a backup quarterback, Oklahoma probably getting Dylan Gabriel back, but just reeling, absolutely reeling, and didn't score a single point. The only team in college football to not score a single point last week against Texas. What is going to happen with that? I am fascinated to see. Fascinated to see. All right, couple quick donations before I get out of here. Daniel, are you coming to the Cats at TCU? If so, beers on me. Well, I appreciate that immensely, and thank you for the donation, by the way. I don't know. I'm leaning no. I have a kind of a soft invite to go. My buddy Cole, he and a group of his friends are going to the game, and they've had the trip planned for a while. So he kind of threw that invitation out to me. Look, there's a part of me that would love to go. But as I've told you guys before, after 10 years of traveling and being on the road with the team week in and week out, I just am not quite as motivated to do it, even though it is really fun. If you win, it's it could be a loss. And then, it's a 7-hour drive to Dallas. It's hard. Fort Worth. Sorry, Fort Worth. TCU fans, don't kill me for that one. So it is tempting in a way, but I'm leaning toward not going right now. But if that changes, I will definitely let you know. And I certainly appreciate the offer. Absolutely do. Zach, what's up, Zach? You can close us out here. Zach says, with Cincy, Houston, and UCF leaving the AAC, will the Sun Belt become the most interesting G5 conference to watch? App State, Coastal, and JMU seem fun. Yeah, I think absolutely. In the short term. Now, I don't long term. Maybe the AAC can build itself back up. Yeah, JMU ranked in there after just making the move up to FES football. Coastal Carolina obviously is a blast, and that's been true for a while now. And then App State, I mean, they're not even, to me, they're beyond kind of novelty program. That's a good program. They play a fun brand of football, and they've been a giant killer. So yes, I think no doubt the Sun Belt. This is the Sun Belt's time to shine. Good time to be a Sun Belt fan, but it's a good time to be a Big 12 fan as well. I appreciate all you guys that hung out in the chat here tonight. Again, if you're watching this taped, you can donate at my Venmo account, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you'd like to do that. You can sneak in a like on the video if you haven't done it yet. That would be great as well. Spread the word on social media, word of mouth, friends, family, whoever. Let them know about the channel. If they're a Big 12 fan, if they're a fan of a Big 12 school, let's continue to grow this community. We are over 15,000 subscribers, over 15K now, which is humbling. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate you all so much for helping make this great and giving me a platform to talk Big 12 football and conference realignment with all you guys. So take care. Hit me up on Twitter at JLKurtz if you got something for me. In the meantime, enjoy the college football weekend. Enjoy Oklahoma State, TCU, and I will talk to you guys soon.